So my name is Jason Hyduk. I'm the Director of Administrative Services for Tahoe Donner, and I want to thank everyone for being here. May is Wildfire Preparedness Month, and we are hosting the Town of Truckee OES, who's connected all these different agencies here tonight to talk about their respective part about wildfire, from suppression to prevention to preparation to response. So with that being said, we have one other housekeeping item regarding translation, and so I'll step back for a minute.
Si hay alguien que esté viendo la reunión en línea que necesite interpretación, vamos a tener interpretación durante toda la reunión. Hasta abajo en las pantallas hay un botón que dice Interpretation o Interpretación y pueden ir al canal de español donde deberían ver y escuchar la presentación en español. Vamos a tener también la presentación grabada. No sabemos todavía cuándo va a salir, pero va a estar disponible para si la quieren compartir con quienes no pudieron estar presentes. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. Before we get going tonight, I'm going to go around the table and have our presenters just state their name, their agency, and their part, and then we'll get into the presentation. 4 questions for people in the audience at the end of the presentation. We will take those here if you have a question you want to ask. For the folks online, that I ask that you submit your questions. If we get a whole bunch of similar ones, we'll try and answer them all at once. For questions we don't get to, or if we run out of time, we will refer those questions to the appropriate agency. So if you do submit a question, please put an email or a contact so that we can get it back to you. And again, we are recording this and we will make this available on multiple different platforms from the different agencies. So with that, I'll turn it over to James to start the introductions, and we'll go around the table starting with him.
Hi, everybody. My name is James Blattler. I'm with the Town of Truckee and am the Emergency Services Manager.
Hi, I'm Stephen Poncelet, Truckee Donner Public Utility District, Public Information and Strategic Affairs.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Grimm. I'm the Director of Land Management for the Tahoe Donner Association.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Cookfisher. I'm the District Ranger for the Truckee Ranger District of the Tahoe National Forest.
And good evening. I'm Eric Hornvet, Wildfire Prevention Manager with Truckee Fire.
Hello, Jim Hudson, Deputy Chief with CAL FIRE, serving Nevada, Yuba, and Placer counties.
And I am Lisa Madden, Operations Lieutenant for the Truckee Police Department.
Great, thank you. So we're going to move on to our wildfire outlook and fire suppression resources, and we're going to start with our 2 agencies that are going to speak on this, which would be CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service. So we'll start with CAL FIRE.
Okay, well, thank you. Just go ahead, you can go advance to the next slide then. So just wanted to paint a picture of where we were last year and where we're going this year, or trending towards as far as the fire season. Then we'll get into some of our operations and some of our fuels reduction projects specific to the Truckee Tahoe area. About 8,000 fires a year is what we average annually with CAL FIRE. Last year, we dispatched 7,553 fires across the state of California within the state responsibility area. In 2025, as of May 1st, we were well over 1,100 fires, and obviously we saw very significant activity in January in the Lake Tahoe, or excuse me, the Los Angeles Basin, which our acreage is extremely high for a May 1st time of year. And we lost 16,000 structures last year as well. So I just want to paint that as a picture as we move forward and where we came from 2024 into 2025. And interesting stat, last year, just we loaded and dumped 10 million gallons of retardant across the state of California. So. In 2024, and across the Nevada, Yuba, and Placer counties for the CAL FIRE Nevada, Yuba, Placer unit, we had 427 fires that had just over 1,200 acres. That's our 5-year average is typically around 25 to 26,000 acres. And that might be based off very large fires that we have that could spike that number. But all in all, we were not heavily impacted across the Nevada, Yuba, and Placer counties last year. I attribute that to a very aggressive initial attack. And one thing we like to relay, what CAL FIRE's mission is. And though we see the large fires across the state that are very media worthy annually, it's the fires that don't make the news that we are also very proud of it. Our mission is to contain 95% of all fires to 10 acres or less. So looking at 2024 with 427 fires and only 1,256 acres, we were just under 3 acres per ignition last year. So relatively successful year. Go ahead and advance. Thank you. This entire region is dispatched for the Grass Valley ECC. It is one of the busiest, most active emergency dispatch centers across the CAL FIRE units. We had 39,000 calls last year, generated over 73,000 responses, and that service is dispatched from Sacramento County all the way to the state line in Nevada. And we also dispatch for 30 agencies within the state of California and one outside as we dispatch for Incline Village as well.
So we're having a request to slow down.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't want to go over time.
A lot of slides.
Okay.
But they're,
Gotcha. No problem. And then just moving down, just put it in perspective, for CAL FIRE, we dispatch approximately 600,000 calls on average annually. So next slide, please. As we move into this year, I just wanted to paint a picture of what our precip, our drought outlook, and then also what our grass crop is looking at. So 2025 was what we're calling a water year. The precipitation was slightly above average. Just in this area, we received 90 to 110% going from the valley to the crest of the Sierras on our normal precipitation. So that is a positive as far as our brush model and our timber model. But as we see in the future slides, that also trends towards a very productive grass crop as we move into fire season as well. So next slide. Just looking across California as of May 1st, as far as drought conditions, we are looking very well. We are not in a drought condition across Nevada County, the Truckee Basin, or the Sierras. And then we have seen the late season rains that we've been seeing across the area, which we hadn't seen in years past, compared to Southern California, which really hasn't seen, only seen a couple days of measurable rainfall across the last 2 years, which contributed to some of the growth during the Santa Ana wind event for this Palisades and Eaton incident. So thank you. Next slide. One thing I did want to bring a note is this is our third highest year on record over recorded history on our grass crop and our pounds per acre. So it's important to remember, the grass crop and those light flashy fuels, those are our receptive fuel beds. That's more fuel for ignition, and it can quite frankly be, a little bit more intense, the more pounds or tons per acre of fuel loading we have within the grass. So the wet winter we had accompanied, we've all seen the weather across the region, sun, rain, it has contributed to a grass crop. Well, it needs to be able to transition into the brush and to our timber models, but we do have a very receptive fuel bed this year, and that's something, as we undertake very aggressive initial attack and sending the full breadth of our resources to every ignition is to prevent that from that transition from the grass into the ladder fuels. Next slide, please. Just CAL FIRE as an agency, right now with the state of the economy in California, our budget is appearing very stable. You will see our C-130s in the air this year. The first one is in service. The second one will be coming on service. They are out of McClellan, very short flight time to this area. So you will be seeing if we do see any incidents, and they are, even though they're a larger tanker, they are an initial, what we call an IA or initial attack aircraft. So very fortunate that these have a very short flight time to the Truckee Tahoe area and pack quite a bit of punch. And we also have our 2 S2 tankers out of Grass Valley, less than a 13-minute flight time to the Truckee area to service this area, along with our aircraft. And our S70I program, we're almost fully a Black Hawk fleet, Firehawk, for our rotor wing or helicopter assets. So you'll be seeing those in the areas as well. One thing we're really working on as a department is investing with those PBAs and those NGOs. Those are your private burn associations, to get black acres and to get prescribed fire through the CEQA process, and making sure that, we're investing when it comes to these fuels reduction projects. Our priority when we're working through our ignition management plans and our strategic fire plan for the unit is always going to be community protection. So, and then we'll talk about some of the projects specific to this area as we move forward as well. So, and then always we're working on looking at AI, emergence technologies, and That is a very big focus for our department, and we are looking always being very active how we can leverage those locally within Nevada and Placer counties as well. So, and the biggest change for us just culturally is we're going to be hiring about 2,500 people over the next few years. We've changed our shift pattern within the department for the health and wellness of our employees, but that's also 100 more people to respond to those large fires when the time calls. So you'll be seeing significant staffing, and that will affect all of our stations, including Truckee and North Tahoe. So you'll have more personnel assigned to those stations as well. So we're in a new era for CAL FIRE. I think if you look at Chief Smith and I, when we were hired as our quote unquote seasonal firefighters, you're lucky if you were hired by July 1st. And if you made it to Halloween, that was a good year. As an agency now across the state of California, peak fire season, where we have all of our ground assets, bulldozers, hand crews, staffed, is now March 15th through December 15th. And even when we reduce our staffing from March 15th to December 15th, we are keeping our station staffed for the most part at 1 engine per station. And then the rest of the year, we are at 2 engines per station. So with that 66-hour or reduced work week, that is one of the benefits for us. So, and obviously the Truckee station is one of the stations that we've had staffed year round for going on 5 years now since I became the operations chief for the area. So next slide, please. So across the unit, we always have 22 engines, 3 L staff supporting the area, 7 hand crews, 4 dozers, and our fixed wing operations. We will have a Type 1 helicopter servicing this area out of Truckee this summer. It's scheduled to arrive in mid-June. That'll be a CH-47 Chinook Type 1 water dropping helicopter. And we will also have the Type 2 212 Huey at Auburn headquarters, very short flight time as well. So very well pre-positioned aircraft to service this area between McClellan, the Grass Valley Air Attack Base, and the 2 copters, and then the Type 1 copter that will be at the Truckee Airport. We also received funding, all units did, for an additional division chief, so that allowed us to have a span of control. We've created a division, we're calling it the Central Division, and it's really our specialized programs within wildland. So we've got an assistant chief that is focusing just on dozer, crews, and air operations. Took a lot off my plate, which is good, but a lot more time and energy is going to be put into that, and be working with the town of Truckee on, as we, what air assets available for the area, and what we can do as far as hand crews, fuels reduction. So it just really have a span of control. So pre-fire efforts in the area, we have implemented the Immigrant Gap State Demonstration Forest. That is a state forest that is operated by CAL FIRE. Right now, we are really looking at how to appropriately thin, masticate, and as well as thinning that forest. And it's designed to provide an example of what a healthy forest looks like. So you'll see a lot of work in that area, and that's around the Highway 20 and 80 intersection, working very closely with the County of Nevada and the RCD as well on funding for some of those projects. Continued pile burning in the Antelope Valley area. We have a planned event to complete the Wattle Ranch prescribed burn that Chief Smith will be the incident commander of. And then being very active with defensible space inspections across all of our 3 counties and in this area specifically as well, because prevention is also just as important as creating black acres and field breaks. And we've also, that's not on the slide, but we've made a concerted effort over the years at the Brockway Summit for planning for fuel breaks there and pile burning to reduce fuel loading. So that has been a significant priority for us as well. Some priorities we have is moving across this year is our AI, and you've heard a lot about the governor's initiatives for that, and what those cameras can do. It used to be where we had lookouts, and they would call in and say smoke report, and we would send engines, and they're just looking, scanning 360 degrees throughout the day when there was daylight. We transitioned to the fire cameras, but somebody had to monitor those. Now, with the transition to the artificial intelligence cameras, they're continuously scanning automated for anomalies on the horizon. And we have 43 of those serving this region. Just a quick stat, if you look at it, last year, as I mentioned, 7,553 ignitions across the state. 1,700 of those were detected by AI first before the first phone call with the alert cameras. So between the department, we're looking to add 100 additional cameras this year for CAL FIRE. PG&E is also looking to add 70 additional across the state. So we are in talks with not only our department with PG&E, where we place those to have supplement those 43 cameras that are already in place, just to have that 24-hour surveillance of artificial intelligence. They don't necessarily recognize what smoke are, but any anomaly on the horizon, it will ping the command center to take a look, and then we see the smoke. It's actually quite an anomaly and something I didn't think I'd see in my career, but it's very effective. About 25% of our dispatches last year, that was the initial report across the state ahead of or in conjunction with 911. So pretty impressive there. And like I said, we're a very initial attack heavy unit. We basically send a high dispatch. If you look at, based on the fuel conditions, I'm working with the unit chief, Brian Estes. I made the decision a couple years ago that regardless of the fuel loading and weather conditions, we're going to send the max response, which is a little different paradigm shift for us, but it seems to be effective. And with our acreages reduced, black acres last year reduced was significant. So. And thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hudson. Before we move on, I'm getting another request from the room back there that we are speaking faster than they can translate.
Sorry.
I appreciate it. I know we have conflicting interest here with slides and time, but I also want to make sure that we get this information out to our Spanish-speaking, people in our community.
Great. Thank you. I've started to think of these presentations as opportunities to share how I'm going to inconvenience you this summer, because we're going to be talking a lot about the project work that we have planned in and around Truckee. So again, my name is Jonathan Cook-Fisher. I'm the district ranger here and been in the position about 6 years. So feel like I got a good pulse of your most popular trails. And I will share that we don't purposefully try to impact anyone's summer vacation, but we've got a lot of great projects in mind. And in fact, if you can go to the next slide, please. First thing I wanted to lead off with is one of our most signature partnerships we have going here on the east side of the Tahoe, which is the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership. And so the North Yuba, many of you have heard, they kind of have their signature project. They're trying to treat well over 100,000 acres in the Yuba watershed. Well, we're trying to treat close to 60,000 acres over the next 10 years. And we're doing it through a collaboration between the Nature Conservancy, the Truckee River Watershed Council, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, NFF, and the Forest Service. And I will point out that having Truckee Meadows Water involved is really interesting because, of course, the reservoirs and the river itself are a main drinking water supply for Reno and Sparks. So that does allow us to enter into some pretty interesting funding and operational partnerships. So that's been a big win for us. In our first year of operation on the right side, you'll see some statistics there, which is we did treat over 2,000 acres of fuels. We did complete 2,000 acres of actual forest thinning. We've prepped another 6,800, and then we've completed through NEPA a total of 12,000. So 60,000 is certainly ambitious. My goal is not to have 60,000 acres planned, our collective goal, but actually 60,000 acres of implemented. It's really getting the work done, which is key. Next slide, please. So to the north side of Truckee, these are some of the larger projects you may be interested in. Alder 89, which is adjacent to Alder Creek and along the 89 corridor. It goes up pretty far north, actually, if you can see the red. That may be implemented or start implementation as early as this summer. And so that project was purchased by Sierra Pacific Industries, and they're in the process of planning out that work. And again, it may start as soon as summer. Boca, the Hobart, Russell Valley recently signed that decision. That's going to be both a timber sale and stewardship contract, but you can see by all of these projects, we are focusing on that interface with community in the wildlands, and we're focusing on drinking water supplies. So that's essentially the aim of all of these projects. Sales is on the Sierraville Ranger District, but it does indeed drain to the Middle Truckee, which is why it's on this map. Next slide, please. So to the south, our most at-risk landscape remains the Highway 89 corridor. You may remember that Cabin Creek started off, what was that, 2 years ago now? We unfortunately needed to close down that trail system, but is now back open because we've made such great progress. We're going to be moving towards Big Chief there, which is to the south of that previous Big Jack East project. And then Deep Creek will probably represent the third phase. That whole project was called Five Creeks, and that was a decision that's almost 3 or 4 years old now. All of these projects, mind you, they include kind of 3 components, which is we need to deal with the brush through mastication thinning. We do some logging, try to get out commercial material. And then ideally, we will come in and do prescribed fire. Because while we may be average precipitation, we certainly remain well below average in terms of fire on the landscape. We have a major fire debt. These are fire evolved ecosystems. At some point, we need to bring fire back in. Best example I could bring is simply you go for a walk on your favorite trail, go off that trail just a few feet, and you'll encounter 6 to 12 inches of just duff. Well, natural fire would obviously burn that on a more regular basis. So it's a huge important process for our restoration needs. We'll say that Alpine Meadows, that also may start this summer. And so between Alder 89 and Alpine Meadows, we should have, I hope, 2 projects in operations. And then Big Chief should be going out for sale here pretty shortly as well. Long story short is we're making great progress. We're getting some really important work done. Next, please. Our other signature project, which we've done in partnership with Nevada County, cannot thank them enough, but we've entered into I think a novel approach to how we might prep our landscape for the inevitable need to go into suppression mode, which is we have well over 200 miles of trail, in some places co-managed with the county or exclusively managed, but includes national forest, 200 miles of roads in which we're doing mastication and thinning on 150 feet on both sides of that road. So the idea is simple, which is if and when we have that start, we want to create a landscape by which we can engage and have different options for suppression activities. So the roadside work is, I hope, going to be a big part of that. So a good neighbor agreement with Nevada County means Nevada County can help us be a lead implementation for that. And I see us hopefully getting additional funding to really continue and grow that. Ideally, roadside work becomes something as commonplace as putting your trash out on a weekly basis. It's something we can predictably fund and manage on any given year. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of some of the roadside work that was done out at Boca. You can also see it on Old Reno Road. Next slide, please. Ideally, and the project calls for that we would masticate thin and then we would do roadside burning. So if we can create some nice black on either side of the road, in addition to the thinning, we have created, I think, an ideal landscape, also given some of the topography we benefit from to really go after fire in a useful and beneficial manner. Next slide, please. I will continue to experiment with goats. I will say that, so these, we brought out our furry friends here last, fall, out in the Big Jack East project. The reason for that was we completed Big Jack maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And of course, the white thorn, some of the brush has already come back in a way in which introducing fire is going to be challenging. So the thought was, can we bring goats and sheep back in to see if we can't knock it up or knock it back before we introduce fire? It had some success. They were more finicky than we realized. They did not go after the white thorn, the manzanita, and some of the small trees in a manner in which we thought they would. They went after the sweet stuff, maybe like the deer. So I'd like to continue to see where we could benefit from targeted grazing. I just don't know if it's going to get us ultimately where we need to be to reintroduce fire. But don't be surprised if it shows up behind your house sometime. Send your complaints to John Groom. Next, please. Okay, yes, I wanted to speak to our Type 3 organization. So last summer with our partners, CAL FIRE, which I just can't thank enough. We have a tremendous relationship with CAL FIRE up here on the Tahoe National Forest. But we have a Type 3 organization here on the Tahoe made up of Tahoe National Forest employees. And we were able to at least manage the Royal Fire as a Type 3 organization. The Bear Fire eventually went to a complex incident management team. Long story short is that we generally still have access to those employees. We did lose some, and we are short in some support areas like finance, planning, and logistics. But from an operational perspective, I think it should warm us all to know that at least for incidents of certain complexity and size, that we do have local staff ready to manage that on the Tahoe. And this is inevitably when all of the complex incident management teams, the CAL FIRE teams, are all assigned to other larger fires, that we still have some in-house ability to manage, I think, some pretty important and notable incidents. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next, we're going to move away from kind of the state of fire potential and response and get into law enforcement's role within wildland fires.
All right, thank you for having us tonight. Again, my name is Lisa Madden. I'm a lieutenant for the Truckee Police Department. Go ahead and go to the next slide. A little bit of an introduction. Everybody wants to know what our response is in a wildfire. We don't fight fire typically. We don't like fire, but we do have a role in wildfire response. So I'm going to go over some law enforcement roles, emergency notifications, evacuations, traffic control, mutual aid, safety and security, and repopulation. Next slide. So our role in law enforcement, we're in charge of emergency notifications, as well as evacuations, traffic control, safety and security, as well as, like I said, repopulation. Next slide. So first things first, we do a lot of planning and coordination with our regional agencies, Truckee Fire, Emergency Services, as well as other regional agencies, to make sure that we are prepared for these events prior to them happening so that we can have a seamless operation when we go out and actually have to deal with something such as a wildfire. So when we issue evacuation warnings or orders, you will get an emergency alert, hopefully a code red. Hopefully everybody is signed up for code red. If not, you should sign up. As well as a wireless emergency alert message. That's one way that we notify people of evacuations. We will go door to door when we have the time and staffing. And so an officer will go to your door, knock, tell you need to evacuate. But sometimes we don't have that time or resource. And so we have high-low sirens that we use on our patrol cars. So if you hear a high-low siren driving around your neighborhood, it is time to evacuate. I wouldn't question it. I would just go. And we also are in charge of traffic control and evacuation route management, which I will go into in a little bit, but we are in charge of the inflow and outflow of evacuation areas. One thing to note is how the public can assist our first responders when we're responding to an incident such as a wildfire. Leaving early with an evacuation warning is your best bet. It helps us with traffic flow. And so, you know, if you get that evacuation warning, or if you have extra things that you need to pack, such as livestock, or if you have someone in the family who has mobility issues, leave early, get prepared, and be ready to go, just so that we're not responding to those emergencies within the emergency. Next slide. So our priorities in law enforcement, first and foremost, is life safety. Our second is vulnerable populations. This includes hospitals, senior center, schools if they're in session. And so we prioritize those areas if they are affected by a wildfire. We also prioritize our communication with Incident Command because they have real-time information on where the fire is, where our resources need to be. So we prioritize our communication with them. And we also prioritize responding to the ever-changing wildfire conditions. Sometimes we're notified last minute that we need to go to a different area. And so we have to prioritize our resources, knowing what information we have and how to respond. Next slide. So like I mentioned before, one of our responsibilities is traffic control. So when an area is evacuated, we maintain the flow of traffic out of the evacuation area. We try and funnel people out as quickly as we can. And you'll see, law enforcement at certain traffic control points, and they will be flowing people out. They will not let people back in unless you are a resource that we need. So the purpose of us getting people out is so that we can get resources in to either fight the fire or respond to another emergency within that evacuation zone. So we will be blocking off roads. So just an information, once you go out, you cannot come back in. Next slide. I wanted to touch on law enforcement mutual aid. We call it LEMA. And this is a pre-established system for law enforcement resource sharing. And how we use LEMA, we're a fairly small department. So when we respond to something such as a wildfire, we assess and we know if we need additional resources, what our capabilities, if it's outside of our capabilities with staffing or whatever it is. So we will call Nevada County is our first phone call to get those resources coming up here. And once we call the county, if they have used all of their resources, then they reach out regionally to get additional resources. And if the regional resources are used up, then they'll reach out to state resources. So you can see someone on a fire, a law enforcement officer from Sacramento County or Roseville, will pull from the entire state just to get our resources up here. So we call, there is an order to it, but we have that ability and we have that resource, which is huge for us. Some examples of our past partnerships and deployments, some of the fires that were in the last couple of years, we've reached out to Nevada County. CHP is a huge asset for us as well, since they are local. They help us a lot with our traffic control points, as well as Placer County. They'll respond as well. So those resources are invaluable in the first 24 hours, and then we can start responding with additional units as needed. Next slide. So some of the tasks that we'll give these outside agencies is evacuation assistance. Not every patrol vehicle has high-low sirens. So we will, if you have a high-low siren in your vehicle, we'll have you respond to areas where we need immediate evacuation. Other times we can have people, we assign them a zone and we'll have them go door to door and evacuate people. We will use them for security patrols in evacuated areas, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. But we do conduct patrols in those evacuated areas because we know that's it's a big concern for people when their power's out and all their belongings are gone. And we use them for, like I said, law enforcement presence at roadblocks and checkpoints. CHP is great at that, so we use them a lot, but you'll see other agencies as well. We can use them for those responsibilities. And then if there's anything else, maintaining public order and supporting fire operations. If we see a need, then we will call for those resources. Next slide. So a big concern, obviously, is safety and security. We are responsible for crime prevention and investigation during evacuations. So like I mentioned, we'll have officers who are at security posts and not letting people in. If there is someone like a utility company that needs to enter, we need to make sure that they're supposed to be there, as well as those extra patrols. And we attempt to mitigate any sort of looting, burglary, thefts that occur within the zone. So typically we'll have, you'll have a security post as well as the extra patrols in the area. Next slide. So once the wildfire has gone through and we start talking about repopulation, there has to be some safety inspections that go on before we allow people back in. Once we get word that we're allowed to repopulate an area, we will start that repopulation process. If we have evacuated all of Tahoe Donner, we're not going to lift the order for all of Tahoe Donner at once because that would be chaotic. So we try and facilitate a safe and orderly return. So we will lift certain zones in order that makes sense to us that we can repopulate. So this is just an example of the past fire. We had a warning and we had notified through Code Red as well as on our social media pages that those orders or those warnings were lifted. Next slide. So here's some contact information for us, our website, our phone numbers. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We do update those during significant events, but really important, go to townoftruckee.gov/ready, and that's where you can sign up for Code Red, get some emergency preparedness documentation and information, and we'll be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one thing to note is that there's an incredible amount of coordination and preparation between different agencies that goes on for a singular response. And that's why you see all these people sitting up here and they're providing that information. And now we're going to shift over to our utility district that has their own part in this.
All right. Thank you, Stephen Poncelé again with Truckee Donner Public Utility District. Next slide, please. This is the history of who we are. I'll go through it quick, but we are not-for-profit, community-owned, locally elected board of directors serving electric and water to largely the town of Truckee, but we are multi-county with Placer County, and we operate in this beautiful mountainous environment. Next slide, please. In terms of our electric utility, we are transmission dependent on NV Energy. We don't generate power here, so everything comes in through transmission. We're trying to maintain affordability, reliability, and carbon-free, so that three-legged stool. Supporting electrification and really trying to play our role in emergency response, maintaining critical infrastructure. And then we do have our California required wildfire mitigation plan. Next slide, please. We like to start a little bit with our known hazards because it kind of drives what we have to do. And we know people are number one in this area, and they start a lot of wildfires and other stuff. Natural disasters of all sorts, man-made disasters goes with those people. We have periods of overpopulation where we have trouble getting in and out of our yard or moving around town. Failure of communications in power outages or emergencies, that's the internet and wireless is a challenge. All of our facilities are backed up with emergency generation. Our water facilities are, so we can continue to function, but the community really struggles. Blockage of I-80 and key evacuation routes, more and more I-80s become unreliable. And so as we look at moving our crews and our equipment and our responses around, we have to factor that in. Cyber attacks, sabotage, terrorism, homeland security, a big issue. The pandemic still impacting us. And then I'll talk a little more about NV Energy's wildfire safety de-energizations, because that's programs we're dealing with today. And then a slew of regulations we have to respond to that put pressure on our capacity and on affordability. Next, please. So catastrophic wildfires, keeping the community safe, investing in wildfire prevention, navigating regulatory mandates, sorry about the typo, protecting electric and water affordability. We do a lot of joint action because we're 80 employees serving 15,000 customers across an electric and water utility. So we try to focus on what we can do. And the past fire was a near miss, and the response was outstanding from, the various agencies. As an electric utility, our transmission's right over the hill from that fire, so NV Energy was contemplating shutting it down. And through direct communication with Tahoe National Forest and others at Incident Command, they delayed that decision, which was big for our community. However, a few hours later, there was the fire down by Boomtown, by Gold Ranch, that is also next to NV's transmission, and they shut us in North Tahoe down for 4 hours that afternoon. So Sometimes you don't see what's happening, but our transmission comes out of Nevada, largely up Dog Valley Road and into the area. So we're already talking wildfire season because they're talking about it down there. And so we always remind people that our focus is broader. Next, please. So we have a wildfire mitigation plan. We're required to do comprehensive updates every 3 years and then annual updates. And we submit those to the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board for review. And so that's an important planning document for this community. We're right in the process of working on it. We'll be bringing our 25 update to our board on June 4th. So that's an annual event. It considers our unique size and scope and scale. We're not very big, but we have a lot of mountainous terrain and a lot of high fire danger. Our system's built to what's called a heavy loading district standard for 100-mile-an-hour winds and snow and ice and atmospheric rivers. Typically, we don't have system issues from wildfire or red flag warnings because they tend to be much less. However, trees can come down and, that's the main risk we deal with. Situational awareness, you'll hear the term, weather stations, fire cameras, AI. We're developing that ourselves, but we're also working in conjunction with our sister utilities, Town of Truckee, Nevada County, Cal OES, because there's a lot of information out there. Cal Fire has built the Wildfire Threat Intelligence Improvement Center with TIC, or I don't know if I got that right or wrong, but they're doing a lot of the fire modeling and the situational awareness that every single utility in California has to do. And, PG&E can, get 100 weather stations. And as a small utility, that's harder for us. So we need to rely on partnerships. And, these wildfire mitigation plans are living documents. They build upon each other. So our annual update again will be completed in June. Next slide, please. Some key strategies that if you read that document, you'll see vegetation management is a big one. We have taken our budget from about $350,000 in 2018 to over $2 million today. Our contract wildfire crews are now contracted year round. And they're helping us with wildfire work in the summer, and they're helping us with outage response and continued veg management during the winter. So we've seen a lot of improvements from reliability. However, that hits rates. That's now 10% of our operating budget going to one item, and that's significant. We are leveraging technology, smart meters, outage management systems, and supervisory control and data acquisition. We have 60 miles of fiber around town. We're going to have 100 when we're done. So all our facilities are directly connected to our control systems, and we're working to be able to activate things remotely. We have pole inspection programs that really target that work. Our reclosers, automatic reclosers, a tremendous device for reliability in the electric utility industry. They've been around for 30 years. In the winter, when you get that blip and you go, oh, I have to reboot my TiVo or something, that's an automatic recloser sensing a fault and then opening and immediately closing. And that's the blip you get. And if that fault's not there, then you don't have a power outage. 10 years ago, PG&E had those working in the summer. A branch went on a tree, it opened and closed and started a catastrophic wildfire. So now we disable them during fire season. So it just becomes a normal fuse. If there's a fault, it opens and it stays open. And we have to visually patrol to safely re-energize. So you're seeing more summer outages for that reason. And NV Energy does the same thing on the transmission side. It's a safety practice. No one likes it, but everybody does it for safety reasons. Workforce training, very important for us. And then we work with NV Energy and Liberty, with our joint action agencies, and with our regulators. Emerging programs and issues. This is where I'll talk a lot about NV Energy's wildfire safety power outages. In California, people use the term PSPS, Public Safety Power Shutoff. That's the investor-owned utility PG&E version. NV Energy, through their Public Utility Commission of Nevada, has Public Safety Outage Management, PSOM, very similar in construct. Under conditions, they will de-energize transmission to Truckee. That takes us out completely, and it takes NV Liberty Utilities out completely. So Truckee North Tahoe will experience extended wildfire safety outages, and it'll last the duration of the weather event. And then NV Energy has to 100% visually inspect their system before they can re-energize, and that's helicopters. So if it happens at night, they can't fly till the morning, and then we have to 100% inspect our system to re-energize safely. So you're talking day to 2 day plus outages for the entire region. So we've been working a lot on communications out there. The NV Energy also has a new program that flew out of Pacific Corps' liability for the James Fire a few years ago up in Northern California. If there's a fire anywhere near their lines, they have a 4, 6, and 2 mile matrix, they will de-energize. And Pacific Corps took out Crescent City for 3 weeks 2 years ago under that program. And that past fire day, when we had the 4-hour transmission outage that afternoon, was an encroachment. It wasn't the weather and the wind. It was there was a fire near their lines, and they de-energized us. So now we have 2 things that could take us out. tdpud.org /wildfire and tdpud.org/PSOM, PSOM are the 2 pages on our website where you can sign up and everything. If you are a customer, please go into your My Account called Smart Hub and, make sure we have contact information, and then you can sign up for alerts, customized alerts, text or email, however you want them. And that countdown on a PSOM, if it's coming, we will give a 48 to 24 hour notice, a 12 to 4 hour notice, and then we'll communicate throughout the event. One interesting thing for businesses in our outage management system is we communicate via email. And so we'll send email announcements to every customer about a major outage. And then Chen will say, I didn't get the email. And for businesses, it's often accounts payable that they have in our email system. And one of the things we're learning is you can put multiple emails in there. So if you're an agency or a business, please review your emails in our system and make sure you have multiple ones so that when people need this automated notice, they'll get it. And then we have a public safety group that we manage. It's about 30 agencies. Everyone in here on the panel is a part of that group. And that's where we actually communicate with the agencies, the first responders, the hospitals, the schools, the telecommunication companies, and we give them direct contact in these events so everybody can then activate their people and be prepared. Next one, please. Emerging programs and issues. We don't have a formal PSPS type program. I believe we will soon. And it's driven by safety, but it's also driven by risk, insurance, and liability. With California's standard of strict liability for utilities through something called inverse condemnation, you can't, even if you're not liable, you're liable for the entire societal cost of a fire. So it's really pushing utilities to be very conservative. And then we are responding to emerging regulations, escalating liability, and increasing costs that are coming around wildfire. And while our 2 most recent rate increases of 12% were very large and very dramatic for us, I happen to be 100 yards in Sierra Meadow on the wrong side. I'm a Liberty customer. I got a 40 and a 22 in those 2 years with more coming. We're about 20 cents a kilowatt hour. Liberty's moving to 40 and PG&E's moving to 60. So affordability matters for our community. And that is it. That's contact information. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to shift a little bit here to our next two presenters, which are Office of Emergency Services, both here locally within the town of Truckee and as well as the county. And a lot of these agencies you hear speak are the response agencies, and they have a lot of really good information. You should go to their website. You should sign up for the alerts. OES coordinates a lot of the backbone stuff and brings a lot of that information together into one spot. And so we'll turn it over to James.
Yeah, thank you. And for those that joined a little bit later, I'm James Blattler. Excuse me. Emergency Services Manager with the Town of Truckee. And, you know, like Jason was mentioning, it's kind of a shift right now. We've been hearing a lot about what these great organizations are doing for wildfire and all the time and investment that they're putting into that. And we're going to talk a little bit more now about what we all as community members, community associations can do to join that fight, really. I did also want to highlight before I get into my stuff too, is that Stephen here represents the Public Utility District. Here in Truckee, there's a lot of different utilities, whether you're a customer of the Public Utility District or Liberty, or, you know, for gas, Southwest Gas, we have a representative here. If you've got questions with Southwest about gas, you can certainly ask them later and we'll be able to hear more about that. But definitely go in, depending on where you're a customer. Everyone has great resources and information about wildfire, and so I recommend that you go and you look into that. Now, with that, wanted to talk about what the town is doing and then lead into kind of what we all should be doing with wildfire. Next slide. So first and foremost, I did want to highlight that the town council has invested a significant amount of time and resources for wildfire, even including wildfire preparedness as one of its major goals and priorities. And so there's definitely, it's not just talking the talk, there's really walking the walk here at the town that's put into this. And you can go on to the next slide. So a lot of that work and investment really comes into the 4 phases of emergency management. The majority of the time, everything that we do here in the Office of Emergency Services and also in our response agencies like the police department, Public Works, I even call a response agency because they're the ones out there in the field as well to assist as needed, is really in the mitigation and planning, mitigation and preparedness or planning phases. And that's the lion's share of the work that we do in hopes that that response is not needed to be as great and that the recovery is not as significant. But we are here and ready to respond to support the incident. In the Office of Emergency Services, I'd like to use the opportunity to point out when we activate our Emergency Operations Center, we're not deciding where the water is going to go on the fire or what resources are going to come in. What we're going to do is really as a town and Office of Emergency Services is support those people that are doing that work. So the incident command posts and get them the resources that they need to help support that fight and that work. And a lot of that's done through coordination with our Office of Emergency Services at the Nevada County, and just a lot of the local partner agencies that we see here at this table, and much greater too with community organizations. We have a really robust community organizations active in disaster group that's managed by a really special person, Ann Rarick, who's done great work in helping coordinate a lot of those community organizations. Recovery is something that we're proposing for next fiscal year to put a lot of time and energy into, developing recovery plans, roadmaps to recovery, creating that really blueprint on what that looks like, because what we've seen time and time again, whether you're talking about Paradise, Lahaina, down in Los Angeles, you know, the moments of a wildfire are horrific if you're going through it. And then that moment's gone, and then you deal with the horror of recovery, which can take years, which is just brutal. And so what we're going to try to do is help reduce that impact significantly with a lot of work next year. Next slide. So some of the investment I was talking about with the town of Truckee, really using industry-leading specialized tools to help. One of the best tools we have is some evacuation modeling software. It's a company called Ladders AI, which is actually developed and built from a couple local Nevada County residents who have done incredibly smart people, capable people have created a really useful program that's used all throughout the mostly Western United States to help model how long it might take to evacuate certain areas, which is extremely important when we're making decisions on whether we should be starting evacuations or not. That information is quickly shared with our incident commanders. I use a good example when the Royal Fire started last year. I believe it was about 8 air miles from the town of Truckee, and to be able to communicate to those incident commanders that, hey, we need to know if this fire is going to be, within, say, 5 hours of reaching the town of Truckee, because if that's the case, we need to start moving now. The fire modeling is improving year by year on how accurate it is, so we invest in that to help understand how the fire might act, even in a moment's notice. I'd like to highlight too, at the state level, it's incredible, the technology. They have flights, it's called FIRIS, that'll go above the fire really early on in the inception of the fire. They can map it with infrared technology. That map of the fire gets sent over to GIS analysts that plug into fire modeling data based on current conditions, and then in a moment's notice can send it to the incident commanders to understand how that fire might act over the next 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours to help with decision making. License plate readers are really effective. We can use anonymized data where we don't have any information on what those license plates are, but we can know that they're a unique license plate. So that way we might know how many people might be traveling in and out of Tahoe Donner, which is a tricky number to put your finger on when you have 6,300 plus homes and the occupancy for full-time is relatively low, but you have a high amount of second homeowners. Lastly, we use zone-based evacuations, which are really effective both at the incident command level and the public information level, and being able to share that information out. And we use those zone-based evacuations for pre-planning as well. You can see an image there on your screen about some of our plans on how to evacuate a certain zone and being able to quickly and effectively get vehicles out of a certain area. Next slide, please. So now what can you do? What can we do as a community to help be ready for wildfire? Number one, I like to say is to sign up for emergency alerts. Getting the right information at the right time allows you to make the right decisions. And no matter what, it's going to be stressful when you're getting information that there might be an evacuation that's needed. But the sooner you can get that information, the sooner you can take action, the sooner you can help your neighbors take action. And so that's really important. We do have a way on our website to sign up for it, but I like to highlight TahoeAlerts.com because that's a centralized database for all Tahoe area residents to go in and look in what evacuation or what emergency alert system your jurisdiction uses. The town of Truckee in Nevada County, we use Code Red, that system. And so if you signed up for Code Red, that'll work for you. But if you're a Placer County resident, they use a different system. So if you go to TahoeAlerts.com, you can enter it in and that'll take you, put your address in, and that'll take you to the website and where to sign up. Being ready to evacuate. And so one of the best tools that I recommend using, I know the Truckee Fire Protection District, CAL FIRE, they have great resources. That's a picture of a wildfire action plan. If you go to readyforwildfire.org or Truckee Fire Protection District's website, it really is a very useful guide on how to plan for wildfire and how to plan for your home being ready, how to be set to evacuate, and what to do when it's time to go. I did want to highlight volunteering is a really important thing, especially in a small mountain community. We really rely on each other to be able to get a lot of things done. And so one thing that I wanted to highlight is our Red Cross numbers for Red Cross volunteers are hurting. And I know that's the case throughout California and throughout the United States, but it's especially important when we're in a rural community, when it takes a lot longer for volunteers from larger metropolitan areas to get here, to have a strong home base. And so go to the website, American Red Cross, and try to look into volunteering if you have the time and ability to do that. I also wanted to highlight Team Rubicon, which is a great organization, and one of our volunteers here in the audience with the Truckee Police Department is actually a member of Team Rubicon. Be happy to answer questions about it later, but it's a great way to help get work done. If you just want to volunteer at a local level, you can do that. You can also get really great experience and go travel around the world, the United States, to help out in disasters. So really strongly recommend looking into that. I do know that they're looking into some opportunities this summer to even do some volunteer fuels reduction work for community members that don't have the resources to get that work done. Next slide. So evacuation planning, I think, is one of the most important things that we can all do as residents here in the town of Truckee on being ready for and having a plan, a household plan on how to evacuate. One thing that's really important for everybody to know is the terminology, the difference between an evacuation order and warning. An evacuation warning, which is what was issued during the past fire last year, means that there's a potential threat to life and property. There's a situation going on that could develop and get worse and threaten life. And so what we recommend, if you receive an evacuation warning, if you're someone that needs additional time to evacuate, whether you're someone who just had, ankle surgery the week before, or somebody that is in a wheelchair, or somebody that just has pets, somebody that's going to take a little bit longer to evacuate, when you get that warning, don't wait for that order to come. Start to get that rolling and get those wheels running out of your home as soon as possible. Now, an evacuation order is a lawful order. That means there is an immediate threat to life. When that exists, we're going to send out those wireless emergency alerts that you heard about earlier. Those are very similar to those Amber Alerts technology that you get on your phones. That is really geographic based. So if you're in an area that's within that evacuation order, you'll get it on your phone. And so it's important to know the difference in terminology. And the state of California is trying to to make that terminology consistent across the state. Unfortunately, when that terminology changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, it can be very confusing for residents when they're given information. It varies from state to state. I mean, there's some states that use the Ready, Set, Go program on when you should be evacuating level 1, 2, and 3. And so it's important to know what we talk about when we're here communicating in California. Having kits and go bags. Really, I recommend having that go bag in your car because there's a good chance you might not be at home when you need to evacuate. And the problem is when that evacuation order goes into place, you're not going to be able to get back into access of your home. And so having those important things with you is a very important thing to plan for. And what to include in those kits and go bags is all within those wildfire readiness kit or wildfire action plan toolkits. It's a really great resource to review there. Knowing your escape routes, a number of areas within the town of Truckee, there might be limited egress, maybe one way in and out. Maybe you have two ways and one of them's blocked. Knowing different ways in and out. Deciding on a meeting point for your family. If everybody's separated, the chances of everybody being together when that order goes into place is pretty slim. Knowing if you have children, what your school plans are, what you're going to do with your pets and animals, and basically how do you plan on leaving home. That communication plan is also really important. Not only how you're going to communicate with your loved ones, but how you're going to receive communications from us, and that goes back to signing up for those emergency alerts. I always want to highlight being a neighborhood leader. One of the biggest things that is the wild card for when we evacuate people and how long it'll take to get out when we're entering the data into that evacuation modeling is knowing how long is it going to take for people to actually start driving away. And that's going to happen a lot sooner when you see your neighbor leaving. And so I really advocate being a neighborhood leader, and that's looking after your neighbors, know what their conditions are. If there's somebody with mobility challenges, help them plan for evacuation, check in on them before you leave. And also just being out there and being a leader and getting the work done and start driving away because other people are going to start doing the same. And lastly, making sure you're testing, updating, and training your plan with your whole family and household so they know what to do when things go wrong. Next slide. And there's my contact information, and that's my portion. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to transition to the County of Nevada Office of Emergency Services. But one thing you're seeing in common theme, there's a lot of information and a lot of preparation that is available to you, but you have to do it. So go talk to your neighbors. And I will say it's better to have a plan that you never use than to try and come up with a plan when you're in a really stressful situation. So with that, I'll turn it over to the county.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening, folks. My name is Paul Cummings. I'm the Nevada County Office of Emergency Services Program Manager. I think what you're hearing tonight is a lot of these are repetitive themes. We're going to talk about evacuation, the fire threats, how to stay informed. And so my presentation tonight will be pretty short, 2 quick slides on evacuation zones and how you can stay informed. So you've already heard Lisa and James talk about Code Red. So if you aren't familiar, Code Red, you may be signed up for it, but is a system that we use to send you a text message, a phone call, and an email if you need to shelter in place, if you need to evacuate, and we'll use that same tool to bring you back after something has gone poorly in your day. Code Red is geographically based. So when you sign up for Code Red, it's important to remember that it's anchored to your house and it's anchored to the evacuation zone that you're assigned to. So if you're hiking and that zone is under an evacuation order or warning, you won't get the Code Red because you're signed up at your house. Does that make sense? Code Red doesn't follow you around. So that's why we recommend the Code Red app, which is geographic based and as a safety net to Code Reds in your area. So as you move around with your phone, if you have that location setting turned on and you move into an area that does have an active Code Red, you'll get the alert. And I think you'll see here the theme with all of these different systems is we try to really layer them in like many safety nets so that hopefully you don't fall through and not get an alert. James talked about that IPAWS system, which is a federal presidential system that I could talk about for an hour, but I won't. The gist of it is that we can send out a message to cell phones, like James said, by evacuation zone that aren't signed up. So that'll help us get to the visitors that are up here. And if you do have a phone that's signed up for Code Red, you'll get a double message. So you'll get 2. So it doesn't hurt to be messaged twice, right? When something's happening. And the messages will be ubiquitous. Whatever goes out in Code Red, the wording and the language will be the same in that wireless emergency alert message. So there's great redundancy there. And I think what we're trying to get across here is these are all trusted sources of information. So of course, there's other places to get information like Watch Duty or the radio or the TV or the internet. But these are the places we want folks to go to first because these are coming directly from law enforcement and emergency services personnel. Another piece of that IPAWS system is the emergency alert system. So some of us may have been in an area where this was used or we've seen it on TV where it interrupts broadcasting and you get that kind of funny tone and then it puts the scrolling text along the bottom of your screen and then you'll hear it on the radio same way with a funny tone and then some words from one of us telling you what's happening. It's probably going to be something along the lines of there's a fast moving wildfire in your area is under immediate evacuation, these zones are under an evacuation order, evacuate immediately, go here for more information. And then Lieutenant Madden also talked about the high-low siren, which is again another system that is ubiquitous across all the law enforcement vehicles, CHP, Town of Truckee, Sheriff's Office, that are using this same European style siren that we're not familiar with. So if you hear it, it's going to sound again different. And when you hear that, it means one thing. Evacuate, you're under an evacuation order. So if all these other systems fail, we hope that you hear that siren and you know that you need to leave. I talked to folks after the river fire and I asked them, what were the ways that you got informed of this thing? You know, some people said, I got a Code Red. Some people said, I heard the high-low siren. Some people said, my neighbor knocked on my door. Some people got all of these things and were like, hey, county, like you're driving me nuts with all these messages. You know, stop it. But that's kind of what we prefer, right? We would rather over message you in lots of different ways than under message you. And we try to have all these systems work together. And they are very collaborative amongst everybody here at the table. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot from a map of the Truckee evacuation zones. You've heard it mentioned already that the that there are evacuation zones in Truckee. And in fact, the entire county has been chopped up into around 250 different puzzle pieces strategically based on geography, based on town and municipal limits. And so all of us are living in evacuation zones and our kids go to school in evacuation zones, and we're moving across evacuation zones continuously. And so this is the new language we're using when we're evacuating people. We're evacuating by zone so that we can have a very limited evacuation, so that we don't draw a big crayon map and then just start evacuating people and over evacuate, or maybe miss it and under evacuate. This gives us a really modular, scalable system to use as we're evacuating the public. So we're encouraging all of you to memorize your evacuation zone. This isn't something that you sign up, it's something that you store in your brain for later. So important to memorize the zone that you live in, where you go to work, where your kids go to school. Put them on a magnet, put them on the fridge, put them in your phone, so that if you hear on the radio that they're talking about these evacuation zones, it becomes a new vernacular, and you're like, hey, I recognize that zone. It's like a bingo game that you don't want to win. You don't want them to call your number. Hopefully they call somebody else's number, but it's important to commit those to memory. So practice your different evacuation routes out of your community, because many of us have one way in, one way out, and then commit those zones to memory. That's all I've got. Thank you.
So you just heard from OES from both the town and the county, and there's a really common theme there, which is go sign up and know what your zone is, know your evacuation routes, know what the alerts are. And if you get two, that's great. So next we're going to shift down to one of our local partners here, and they have a really specific program for Measure T that was approved by the community, and it is focused specifically on wildfire prevention and mitigation. And they have a wide array of programs out there. And so I'll turn it over to them.
Great. Thanks, Jason. And let's jump into the next slide here. So yeah, we're going to be talking all about Measure T and what it's doing for wildfire protection in our community. So we'll talk a little bit about defensible space ordinances, our inspection program, home hardening, green waste, education assistance, grant funding, and projects happening in our community. So all the stuff's on our website. If you want to get in contact with our team, dspace@truckeefire.org. Gets you to about 7 employees that are answering phone calls and emails every day to talk about wildfire and what we can do at the home level. Next slide. This is our small but mighty little wildfire prevention team. So I'm managing our wildfire prevention division, working directly with the chief and under a citizens oversight committee for our tax and ultimately the district board. Our forester is Dylan. We have 2 other full-timers, Maria, who coordinates all of our FireWise efforts in the community, Brittany, who helps out with admin, and then a team of 7 defensible space specialists. And new this year is 2 that are actually Spanish speaking, 1 extremely fluent. So we're excited to step into that area in our community as well. Next slide. Wanted to touch in some milestones. So we've really been running into 2 fully funded years of Measure T. This tax measure was passed in 2021, and we've been rolling it out the last 3 seasons. So we've really started to get our programs greased, and we're getting back to kind of our cyclical, here's where we're going to be. But so far, we've done a ton of work as the whole community. So I'm going to start with it right here. We've conducted well over 12,000 defensible space inspections within our fire district. The community has responded. They've put out almost 10,000 piles on the curb for us to pick up, removing over 50,000 cubic yards of vegetation from our neighborhoods. We just started getting into the home hardening rebate, and we've already got 33 homes that have been protecting their homes from embers with home hardening. We've got over 1,000 dumpsters rebated, whether it's a small 6-yarder at an individual home or these big 30-yard dumpsters to support community wildfire events. And our forester, with a lot of our partners, have already tackled 1,500 acres of critical community fuel reduction work. So that's work happening in your community, in those open spaces, along roadways or immediately adjacent to the community. So that critical fuel reduction work. We've also got $2.7 million of Measure T back out to our community partners through a local block grant program. So sharing the funding, sharing the capacity, getting more done together. As you can see up here, here's an example of working with a private landowner in Juniper Hills to tackle some of those roadside fuel breaks, starting with the road networks, just like you hear the Forest Service talk about, and working kind of inside out from our community. Next slide. And we'll kick the next one. All right, so here in Truckee, we set a pretty bold approach, and that's a 3-year defensible space inspection cycle. So our goal is that we've kind of divided our community up into target neighborhoods where we are walking the roads and inspecting every developed and undeveloped lot, really pushing for that community defensible space approach, right? It's not about being as safe as your home or as safe as your neighbor's home. It's really, we need to get this herd immunity together through community defensible space efforts. All summer long, starting now through October, we're available for free inspection. So if someone wants Truckee Fire to come to their house, walk their property, talk to them about fire safety, defensible space, and home hardening, we're here for it. And that's on top of us doing about 5,000 inspections a year in these target areas. So this year in Truckee, these are the areas that we're going to be inspecting every property in. Fun fact, all these properties were inspected in 2022. So we're hoping to give out a lot of high fives, a lot of kudos, see a lot of progress made, and then really focus back in on what work we need to do in these areas to protect our homes. But we're going to be in the southern third of Glenshire, Olympic Heights, Prosser Lakeview and Estates, Armstrong Tract, and all of Donner Lake, as well as making sure that we're using our data program to make sure didn't miss anything from the past 3 years. And we have awesome HOAs in this area. So Tahoe Donner that you'll hear from in a little bit is our kind of rock star model HOA for local funded, local led defensible space and forestry programs. But a lot of our new developments are keeping their feet to the fire on what they said they would do. And they're managing a lot of their own defensible space, roadside management, and common area open spaces. So it really is a pretty collective effort in the Truckee community. Next slide. All right, I'm not going to dig into this one too much. We are working on a defensible space ordinance. I say working, this schedule is not what we're looking at anymore. We're going to be working with our community for some more conversations and communications throughout this summer, and likely bringing an updated ordinance back to our Truckee Fire Board in the winter of 2026. But just know Truckee Fire's been looking at defensible space ordinances, and we've had them in place since the 1990s. The state has had defensible space as a law since 1965. So we do need to understand that the past 10 years, we've seen the largest, most destructive, and most deadliest wildfires in the state's history. We need to flip our lens to what we need to do around our homes and around our community to be resilient for wildfire. And so we're going to be trying to work with some partners and make sure we're addressing this holistically and as respectfully as we can, which is a challenge with the state laws that we have to hold up as well. Next slide. All right, it'd be remiss to not take a little education on defensible space. When we look at a home, we really start from the home out. So zone 0 is the first 5 feet around your home. This spot's critical. Getting this area right doubles the chance of your home surviving a wildfire. We're really looking at this zone becoming non-combustible, meaning having nothing in this zone that could readily ignite from those small, pesky little embers going in front of the fire. So this is definitely a switch from where we've been, but our community's done a ton of good work in this zone, and we're happy to keep having these conversations. Next slide. We're going to really dig in on zone 0. So the top things that we keep finding in zone 0 really are maintenance items, right? It's pruning limbs 10 feet away from our structure, creating that bubble around the house, removing any high fire risk vegetation and shrubs, think like juniper, mugo pine, or any of our native shrubs that can ignite readily easily. Managing the leaf and needle litter. We love big trees. We like to keep big trees. Big trees are really resilient to fire if well maintained, but we do got to manage that fine fuel that they put out throughout the year, which is the pine needles and the leaves that collect near our homes. And then we need to be mindful of what we're storing within zone 0. So next to your house, on your deck, under your deck, we really do need to start breaking up with moving firewood away from the home, not storing lumber, and really being mindful of what other combustible items that we're storing right next to our house. Next slide. As we move away from the home, we're just looking for maintenance and management. So zone 1 is the next 30 feet. And this we call lean, clean, and green. So you can still have landscaping in this zone. It's all about the right plants with the right spacing and the right place. It's limbing your trees up 6 to 10 feet above the ground, trying to get that spacing or separation between shrubs and trees, and just keeping it lean, clean, green. So keeping it irrigated, keeping it high moisture. Next slide. This is a big message for our whole community. I think you'll hear it talked about from every level, whether it's talking about restoring watersheds and selectively rethinning back our forests back to better conditions for water availability, water yield, and stream quality, us talking about breaking up these ladders or continuity of fuels, or what we have these big partnerships doing to get effective forest health is our forest is extremely overdense. Our reality of what a healthy forest looks like is not what we've seen in the last 100 or 150 years. And so we really need the community to positively grapple with this, but let's not be dense. Let's understand what our forest should look like, and let's get some tree thinning as a positive approach so that we can keep these big healthy trees and promote a forest that'll live through fire. Next slide. So as we get out to zone 2, we're really just looking for reducing fuel. So this is where we tend to be a little bit more lenient with folks, really try to balance, what does that natural landscape look like, landscaping areas, and try to just break up the fuels and keep it reduced. Next slide. So we have a ton of stats. I didn't get super great screenshots of our software, but in 2022, we jumped into a leading edge defensible space inspection software. So we take pictures, we drop points, we do a comprehensive report that talks about defensible space issues, home hardening upgrades. And after inspecting almost 15,000 total inspections around Truckee Fire, I'm excluding Tahoe Donner because they manage their program a little bit differently and in a positive way. But this is what we found. We found that about 9 out of 10 homes have more work to do. So I think we really need to take this on as that FireWise challenge, that collective effort to do more. And these are the items that we need to do more of. We need to do more tree spacing, more tree limbing, removing tree limbs that are overhanging our house, taking care of those vegetation issues within the first 5 feet of our home, getting some spacing back in our shrubs, reducing that ladder fuel effect where pine needles and shrubs and tree limbs connect up into the overstory of our larger trees, removing anything dead within these zones, whether it's pine needles, 1 out of 6 homes having a dead tree, mowing grasses and weeds near our home. And then a big one that I don't want to be the firewood police on, but we're becoming, is we do got to remove that firewood away from the structure during fire season. As we're working out there, this data is based on initial inspections that we completed between 2022 through 2024. I'd be remiss to say that this does not measure all the progress that has been made. So as we start the re-inspection cycle this year, I'm extremely hopeful that these compliance numbers and the amount of work we're doing as a community is skyrocketing above what you're seeing on this screen today. Next slide. Green waste. So this is awesome. I've been talking in a lot of different statewide forums on wildfire, and Truckee really does have what we call a green waste buffet. You could probably look anywhere else in California, and there's no other place that has the same number of options and outlets to easily get this biomass out off your property, help with maintenance, help with heavy lift defensible space. So take advantage of all these programs. This curbside pickup program that we launched 3 years ago is amazing. You can literally put out a pile the size of a massive truck and trailer, make a request, and we come and pick it up with a grapple truck and get this material to the Cabin Creek landfill, and all of it is processed and then utilized primarily for bioenergy. So great program we have going on here. We have 6-yard dumpster rebates. So if you have that big spring cleanup to do, Town of Truckee residents can get 1 of these per property. You get a 75% rebate. If you live in Placer or Nevada counties and you don't have the same yard waste carts that the town has, you can use this 6-yard rebate twice. So that's a little bit nice way to tip our hats to getting this work done. We also support FireWise work days. So if you're a FireWise leader, come chat with us so we can get you these big, large dumpsters out to support your work days. The Town of Truckee and our counties have supported some great programs as well. So residents in the town can have 3 yard waste carts to help out with all that small green waste, a lot of 6 yards of self-haul to the dump. And then we have 3 great drop-off events coming up where you bring your material to us and get it gone. So please use these programs. These are intended to get our community resilient and hopefully make your life a little easier as you're working on all that defensible space work. Next slide. Home hardening, this is great. So as we see that shift for hopefully a lot more defensible space compliance, or maybe getting back into maintenance mode, it's time to put on the home hardening hat. Most of our homes in Truckee were built before 2008, which is that switching year of building code for wildland urban interface fire resilience. So if you have a home built before 2008, probably all of these things on this list are eligible for you to do to upgrade your home, make it more resilient to fire, and keep those embers from being able to ignite your home. So things that we're looking at doing are 5 feet of hardscaping, installing ember-resistant vents, replacing the first 5 feet of combustible fences and gates, decks, tarps, enclosing eaves, windows, siding or roofs if $2,000 helps you do that. But it's really that whole gambit of home hardening retrofit. So you start the process by going to our website, getting us out at your property for an inspection. We can get $2,000 back in your pocket for doing all this great work. Next slide. Next slide. Cool. Another great program we have going on is we're really trying to get in some education with the schools. So we've been piloting this program for a couple of years now, and we're hoping to get this to take off. But The action item here is if you have someone in your neighborhood that needs help getting defensible space done, they're low income, they're elderly, they're disabled, if we can kind of check that box for needs assistance, we go out with our school district and with Sierra Watershed Education Partners. We educate our schools and our youth on defensible space, forest management, prescribed fire, all these cool topics in this wildfire resilience world. And then we get our students out to a property to do service learning. They actually are raking pine needles, picking up, recently cut material on limbs, and we usually fill 2 60-yard dumpsters in less than an hour. So we get so much work done and turn a house from being, at risk for exposure to wildfire to being pretty model of resilience in the community. Next slide. Here's a quick highlight of all these programs and, a highlight of, what good defensible space and, really a hat off of good fire suppression can look like. These were 2 homes pictured that survived the 2024 Davis fire. So use all these programs so that when we have a fire, hopefully our forests look a lot better than this because we're so actively managing our forests near our communities, and we absolutely want our homes to be able to stand the test of a fire. Next slide. Cool, I'm gonna keep this one brief, but this is Measure T putting about $500,000 or more back into the community every year via local block grant program. We allow the community to bring projects to us for forest fuels reduction, forest health, community wildfire preparedness, or education. This year, we received $1.5 million in asks across 10 applications. So pretty neat that our community is here bringing projects forward, and we've created our own little competitive grant program. And we're excited to get, probably the full $500,000+ awarded at our June board meeting. Next slide. All right, some great projects we have going on is last year in 2024, we kicked off 3 large projects over $1 million at work across 300 acres. And we're wrapping these projects up here over the next few weeks, but that's the Armstrong Tract project. So that's just south of us here, actually, in between Armstrong Tract and the South Tahoe Donner hillside, 100 acres of fuel reduction on private lands. We captured a bunch of Sierra Meadows fuel reduction work. And then we'll be working through a little bit of the summer to get the Martis Peak roadside fuel break right. So partnered up with a private road owners association, Liberty Utilities, got 2 contractors out there and are doing about 100-foot wide roadside fuel break in that community. As we move into 2025, Glenshire is going to get a lot of love. So we're going to be putting out a lot of communications in Glenshire. We partnered up with funding from the airport and Measure T, the Truckee Donner Land Trust, and we're going to be doing a very linear 500-acre project from Canyon Springs all the way out to Hurstdale. So really getting that east exposure from Glenshire and that egress right correct. And we're also kicking off a huge initiative with a $7 million CAL FIRE Forest Health Grant with $1 million of local cash match at a Martis camp in Vail. So really cool way that we're using a forest health grant to work from the outside in to complement all the work we're doing from the inside out of our communities. And just like you heard the Forest Service talking about earlier, we're also in act and do mode, but still making sure that we're pushing forward the planning necessary to get more projects in the pipeline. Next slide. Here's an overview of what we look like. Green is everything that's been completed in the last 5 or so years. Orange is the major projects that are in mid-implementation. And purple are all the major projects that we have planned to be completed with secured funding in the next 3 years. So a whole lot of work. I have the areas with the red circles are those 3 projects I talked about that started last year. And the areas circled in green is that Glenshire to Hurstdale project that we'll be working on hopefully by August of this summer. Next slide. As we go into fire season, we do got to always talk about the annual burn ban. The community is really understanding this now. We've seen our number of calls and ordinance complaints go down in the last years. But just a reminder, when Truckee Fire and CAL FIRE go into our seasonal burn ban and declaration of fire season, it's no more wood and charcoal. So we do allow propane and natural gas, built-in or portable pits, as well as propane, natural gas, and wood pellet smokers. When we get into those red flag days, if we have any, that's the day that you really need to put your fire safety hat on and do not use anything that could create a spark or have an open flame. Next slide. And thank you, Truckee. I just wanted to close with, hopefully you all got this in the mail with the recent mailer that went out. But this is kind of our 5-step this year. Start with Zone 0 around your house, remove dead vegetation, work on address visibility, schedule a free inspection for defensible space and home hardening, and talk with your neighbors. We need our communities to spread this message. because connecting with our community is challenging, as we all know. So talk with your neighbors and get ready for fire season. Thanks.
Thank you. Coming from the fire service, I will say that what Truckee as a whole community has done with Measure T is kind of the unicorn as far as being at the leading edge for identifying something, creating a program, having that community support, and then enacting it. And hopefully we have a herd of unicorns across the Western US that kind of follow that lead as far as having these programs out there. So now we're going to shift over to Tahoe Donner, which again is kind of a unicorn in the sense of being a HOA that has a really large footprint, but also has a really long history of doing vegetation management before it was even a thing. And so I'll turn it over to John Groom.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening, everybody. John Groom, Tahoe Donner. I just wanted to start by acknowledging that we are not a response agency, but we are a preparedness organization. And that's some of the projects that I'm going to focus on tonight. We're pretty much in partnership with everybody at this table and in this room, which is rather unique, and it's takes everybody in this room in order to get these projects done. But for this year, I'd say last year, we actually were able to manage about 600 acres of fuel reduction between our private properties and our external properties. For this year, the polygons that you see here, are the brown spots, are the areas that we'll be working in. We balance between trying to assist our homeowners with reaching that 100-foot defensible space around their homes, where we have common area or open space connected to their private properties. That's kind of a unique trait of Tahoe Donner. And then we're also focused this year and in the future all along our southwest perimeter. And that is the area that's in the lower section of the slide. And for folks that don't know, Tahoe Donner in a lot of areas goes right down to I-80, which is a rather unique scenario. We've had about 6 fires start in that area that tend to come up that hillside very quickly. And that's going to be our future primary focus. So as we're saying over here, we've got there's just under 300 acres listed there. And I bet that we'll get over that by the end of the year. So next slide, Aaron. This is actually our planned work. So that previous slide's a little bit easier to see, but this is also that balance. So this map shows where we are prioritizing work within the common area, the open space within the association to help our homeowners reach 100 feet of defensible space where their private properties don't go out that far. But it also highlights where we're focused on really trying to manage our strategic acres and get in there to the areas that are going to be really difficult during a fire suppression operation. So again, the idea is that if we can get ahead of the curve and we can actually start to reduce the fuel loading before those fires break out, I'd love to agree that we could keep them under 3 acres the way that CAL FIRE was talking about earlier. So this map kind of highlights those efforts. Next slide. This is a really unique project that we've taken on with the town of Truckee using TSSA 1 funds. So for the next 2 years, we'll be investing in fuel reduction along the evacuation routes, working with the PUD on this. So thanks for the partnership there. And actually, Eric, Truckee Fire was able to actually reach out to the homeowners down below on Northwoods. And so this is going to extend all the way down Northwoods. Jonathan and the Forest Service are doing Alder Creek. So really the 2 main evacuation routes out of Tahoe Donner will have fuel reduction work done all along them. And we'll be starting this year. I think, in fact, Truckee Fire is already working down below, which is great. It's nice to see that work this early in the season. Next slide. Yeah, so we have a slightly different defensible space program. Tahoe Donner has been in the fuel reduction business for about 30 years, working on the exterior landscape. But each year, we evaluate about between 1,000 and 1,200 homes between defensible space inspections and transfer of property. One of the unique scenarios here at Tahoe Donner is because of the HOA system. Last year, we were able to reach 99% compliance with defensible space ordinance. And that takes a lot of work between the various programs. So most of our homes have been in this program for about 2 to 3 cycles. So this is one of the key elements, along with our fuel reduction work along the exterior perimeter, that allowed the association to gain parametric insurance, which Jason was a big part of, on the landscape. And I think the PUD mentioned, or somebody mentioned earlier, you know, that cost of actually restoring the landscape after a fire comes through, parametric insurance is part of that the association is trying to work on, and really trying to move forward, seeing if we can leverage that entrance into the insurance market to benefit the private homeowners and recognizing the fuel reduction work done. Next slide. Yeah, so these are the resources available to the homeowners of Tahoe Donner, but anybody can find these on our website. Our program, between our defensible space staff and our forestry crews, about 35 staff that work about 6 months out of the year. The association invests, I want to say, approximately 1.2 to 1.5 million a year in reducing fuel in the defensible space program. Pretty unique. And then our partners at Truckee Fire, Cal Fire, the Truckee Tahoe Community Foundation, the town. Really with that, we were able to maximize that with leveraging match dollars. And so each year I'd say we're probably operating on about $200,000 to $300,000 in grants, which is huge. And it brings our partners onto the landscape, and it benefits us in having other professionals in the area just kind of have eyes on the landscape. So yeah, these are the resources available. I think it captures kind of a lot of what other folks had. So anybody is welcome to use us or reach out to us here. But again, really, we couldn't do this without the partnerships that we have around this table. So thank you, everybody. And I think that's it. Aaron, is that? Nope. Oh man, one more. So I had my slides backwards. This is all of the fuel reduction work that we've done over the last 30 years. So yes, it is like a Skittles map, but it really stands out. You can see the lower area down in here, the pink polygon that stretches down kind of like a snake to I-80 was in partnership with Truckee Fire Measure T. The Forest Service, we were able to do some work on their lands. The kind of shaded out areas down there, a lot of those are Forest Service parcels that we're working with the Forest Service on this year and in the future. So again, pretty unique. 2014 to 20 is highlighted in kind of the yellow color, 2021 to 24 in the salmon or pink color. But yeah, it takes a lot of work, and we couldn't do it without everybody in this room. So thank you. Is that it? Am I in? Oh, good. All right.
I think that's it. First of all, thank all of the panelists for being here, all the different agencies. It's a continual effort. So now we go into question and answers. We have a few questions online, but I want to start with if there's anyone in the audience who has a question that they would like to ask. And if you don't want to ask in person, again, we can email. And if we have a question that we can't answer here afterwards, we'll make sure it gets to the appropriate agency. But again, we need your contact information. But if, come on up.
I remember these people on the association. And we are constantly doing maintenance, and one of these projects we have right now is replacing our siding. I understand from the state of California that home hardening and siding is going to be pretty mandatory with new housing and going forward. I know that the town of Truckee does not, does not promote the concrete siding, and as a matter of fact, it's still not under a permit process. What I'm wondering in terms of the town of Truckee is, will that be happening soon? Because right now we're repairing with our usual wood shingles, but when we want to be replacing, we want to replace with concrete. And we're hoping that within the next year or two that permit process will change.
Thank you for your question. And for those online likely couldn't hear, one of the big questions was, some of the town's development building codes might not be fully aligned with what our wildfire risk is. And there's work definitely needed to bring that alignment together. And so I'm glad you asked the question. One of the things I forgot to mention is some of the things planned out for the next year and 2 year work plan that's being proposed to council right now is really taking a large deep dive within the town's building codes, municipal codes, to really bring that alignment up to place. And so what we're looking at is kind of a 2-phase project. And those phases could go on, could overlap these phases, but the first part is really taking that look and seeing what updates need to be made. And really, what can help support that afterwards, or, as that's wrapping up, is looking into a potential incentive program to get some of this work done. Because replacing your siding on your house, doing a lot of these mitigation projects are very costly. And that's going to be, to some people, prohibitive. So I know that the Truckee Fire Protection District, they raised their program for being able to match some of the mitigation projects. But if you're talking about replacing a roof or doing siding, that would touch a very little portion of it. So we'll be looking into what might make sense, what's feasible, and propose options to council for funding. So that's likely part of what's coming ahead. But it's definitely something that we are aware of and looking to address as quickly as possible.
What is the difficulty index? In one of your slides, you had there was the mitigation by difficulty index.
Yes.
And John, just real quick, if you could repeat the question too, if you don't mind, for the viewers.
Sure. Thanks, James. And I'm sorry, I didn't get your name, but somebody had a question about the difficulty index. And so the difficulty index, and actually there's professionals in this room that are probably much better at answering this question, but really it highlights the areas in a GIS system that are identified as areas that are going to be difficult to initiate fire suppression in. And so my point there was that those are kind of our primary focuses in the future, are getting into those areas before you actually have to get there to suppress the fire.
All right. Are there any more questions in the?
Almost everybody is here, but what? Who's in charge?
So I'm going to look at my CAL FIRE and Forest Service partners to probably answer that the best as far as how that overlay works for different jurisdictions as far as fire restrictions and then use within designated areas.
Yeah, for the state parks or the state areas, so locally, right now we're in permit required burning. A campfire permit is required. When we transition into our annual burn suspension, which we are getting close to, right? It's going to be June here pretty quick. That will eliminate the ability to have those fires, and I'll defer to the Forest Service for the Forest Service lands.
We're going to continue to update our campfire restriction process on the Tahoe. So last summer was maybe the first summer in some time in which we went to a hard restriction, even on hosted campgrounds. I'd say we do regularly engage with cooperators and adjacent agencies about some of it's difficult. You've got state lands, fed lands, private lands, county lands, town lands. Are all the fire restrictions in lockstep? Sometimes they're not. And so, yeah, there can be optics issues. There could be confusion with the public. It is something we regularly wrestle with. But I'd say that at least for the Tahoe National Forest, there's some growing desire, let's say, that let's better align with local fire restrictions where we can, to, at least as a good community member, we can help sort of negate or reduce any of that conflict or the optics of, oh, why can I do it there but not over here? And I will remind, just as a general statement, there's a standing fire restriction around the town of Truckee on the National Forest and the reservoirs and most of the Highway 89 corridor all year round. So there's no fires allowed outside of campgrounds at any time.
All right. Any other questions from the audience before we move to the online? I think we only have two, correct? Okay. I'm going to start with the easy one, but I'm going to need someone to do the noise for me. So a person asked, what is a high-low siren? So I could do the wee-wah thing, but I don't know that I can do it directly. I don't know if someone up here wants to try and do the sound, and I'll look to the law enforcement to maybe.
I would love for you to try. Exactly. So that's what it is. It's a high and then a low siren. You could probably look it up. I know we have it on our website, and there is a video that gives an example of what the siren, I believe James is getting the sound right now.
We'll see how this translates. Yeah, and I'll jump in too. So that those sirens it's really new, that program, and getting the word out to people is an important thing for us. It was first rolled out, I think it was somewhere in the North Bay where it did a trial period. There's actually state law that emergency vehicles couldn't use anything than what was authorized, like the standard sirens that you do here. And so they actually changed the law to be able to do this. And it's being used more and more, but because it is new, some agencies are better at using them than others. And we're working really hard to train to be able to use them as quickly as you can. So if you hear it, definitely leave.
How was it even close? So the next question is a little bit more nuanced, and I'm probably going to refer to some of the panelists to answer it, but it was a question regarding the Palisades fire and what we've learned from it, and then what we are doing about it. And I would argue that what we are doing right now tonight is doing something that was not in place 20 years ago, which is identifying wildfire as a threat, identifying the steps you can take to mitigate that threat, as well as having the coalition of different agencies here. Palisades fire was an overwhelming event, but unfortunately it's not unique. And I think we are beginning to get in front of that problem. And we're incorporating technology, building standards, response, getting people prepared before that event so that they're not surprised. I don't know that there's a singular answer to the problem, but I would say that this group right here, and it's happening in other communities, having these events, raising awareness, and making people more prepared for something that is going to happen to some degree at some point is the first step to doing something. And then I guess I would start with CAL FIRE for, as a state agency, what lessons learned, and then what are we doing to begin to address that problem and that impact?
Yeah, absolutely. It is about the preparedness. It is about the ready, set, go. It is about being connected with whether it's code red or any of the WIAs that go out, the wireless, anything you can do to get the notification is key. We discussed this as a department a little bit after the camp fire as well, but I was actually the CAL FIRE incident commander for the Palisades incident. I arrived there the first evening. And it's important to remember that that was a structure-to-structure conflagration under, it wasn't even a red flag event. It was categorized as a PSD or potentially dangerous situation, PDS. And that is a term that's superseding the normal Santa Ana winds events. So, that was an anomaly. That is not a wind occurrence that we're going to see here, but it starts with defensible space. It starts with preparing your home, and it starts by being notified. I was surprised. It took me about 8 hours to get down there since my team was activated after early that afternoon, and it was incredible that there was really people were able to get out. There were fatalities between that and the Eaton incident, but there was primarily found in structures of people that didn't evacuate. We didn't find any fatalities within the roadways. So the evacuation people got out early. And that wasn't a warning. That was, you need to leave now. And, the picture that was painted was, for me, when I arrived there that first evening, is burned up cars on Sunset Boulevard, right? But those people were able to get on the road and then actually run to safety, right? It's about getting out early. It's about preparing your home. And I can't reiterate that enough. And all the steps and actions that you've heard today, all the preparation, that is what you can do as a community to prepare yourself. But I will reiterate, that was a historic wind event. That is not a daily occurrence that Malibu and Pacific Palisades sees. That is not something that, the Camp Fire, that was a wind anomaly, a paradise coming out of the Feather River drainage. So we are prepared. We will always respond with the full breadth of CAL FIRE wherever it is across the state of California, with any of our local cooperators, the Truckee Fire Protection District, the Tahoe National Forest. But when the time comes, it's really about being prepared to leave and doing your part, being a steward of your land in preparation. So.
Thank you. And I think James from OES has some more comments on the Palisades.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to touch on the alert and warning portion of the Palisades and just generally the Los Angeles fires, because there's a lot that's been in the news and what's been reported on things that went well, things that didn't go well, and unfortunately, a lot of things didn't go well. And I've got to tell you, first off, I've spent far too many hours at night reading after action reports from these major catastrophic wildfires, and a common theme of each of those is the lack of effectiveness of alert and warning messaging. And so it's something that we work on constantly, and it's a huge focus on making sure that we can deliver these messages the most effectively that we can. And so there was a number of issues down in the Palisades that were encountered. One that was really widely reported is that they misalerted about 10 million people. There was what looks like, based on a congressional study that was done, some software glitches that helped basically send this message for, it was called the Kenneth Fire. Many of you likely didn't hear about that fire. It was one of the smaller ones that those first days of the firestorm happened. Really, that message was supposed to go out to a small population and got sent out to the greater Los Angeles area. And so there's some things that we already do that would really negate the impact of something like that happening if there was a software glitch from what we use. And that's really the language that we use to send out, making sure that the information is very specific to the area, making sure that it's time relevant. So that way, if somebody did receive that message, sitting on Venice Beach, that they wouldn't be alerted thinking that they need to evacuate immediately. We actually showed this last year during the past fire when we had those evacuation warnings issued. We actually alerted the whole town deliberately, so that way everybody was informed on what was going on. And that information was very specific on geographically where that fire was, what the threat was, what the conditions were. And so that way everybody can be informed. And so that's one way that we can do things to help combat that. And we've developed a lot of pre-scripted messaging to help support that fast. And a lot of this is based on a ton of research. There's people in the academic world that do an incredible amount of research on the psychology of alert and warning messaging. And we follow that template and those scripts because they're shown to be the most effective on getting people to make decisions faster and understanding those risks. Another one of the really unfortunate and a lot more investigative work to understand what happened, it was likely because of the crazy chaos that was going on, was the Eaton fire in the Pasadena area, where you'll hear where a early warning occurred on the east side of this boulevard very early on in the fire, but on the west side, that alerting came very late. And unfortunately, almost every fatality in that fire was on that west side of the neighborhood. And so part of that might be helped by that mass alert and warning that we practice here in Truckee, which is pretty unique that we can do that because of our population levels. But there's still more that's being studied, and we'll be sure to review those after action reports on how to take those unfortunate lessons learned and make things better. I did want to highlight, I know I've been going on, but the Lahaina fire in Maui was an important one for wireless emergency alerts. Unfortunately, a lot of the communication towers were taken out, which prevented those wireless emergency alerts from going out. What we've learned is that the wireless or the emergency alerting system that Paul was talking about earlier, which can be transmitted over radios, that functionality likely still would have been effective. And so we're really pushing having those weather radios, and we actually have some at Town Hall. You're welcome to stop by the police department and we can give you one, where they're just basically wind up. So even if the power's out, those radio signals can hopefully still go out during power outages. And I know Placer County is really looking at investing in some of the infrastructure on bolstering those infrastructure capabilities throughout our area. And I know that Nevada County and ourselves, we're looking at and seeing how we can help support and enhance that work as well. So wanted to highlight those things. And the last one, the campfire being really close to home as well. That's when these wireless emergency alerts were relatively new. And unfortunately, it wasn't heavily utilized during the time. And they would have encountered some of the power issues as well. But what we've seen, one of the unfortunate side effects of these, or one of the fortunate side effects of these terrible terrible, horrific incidents, is that we're finding ways that we can improve, and that's what we're continuing to do, and that's what we'll always do. So that way we can get the words out to the people.
All right. I don't think we have any more questions. So I think we're going to end it, but I'd like to thank James and the Town of Truckee for organizing this and coordinating all the different partner agencies. And I'd like to thank you all for being here, and have a great night. Thank you.